And by the time you hear this, happy Halloween, 'tis the season. Sometimes people see me and think they've just survived a ghost sighting because of how little pigment I have in my skin. I look like a damn piece of scratch paper in a winter on a freaking plate of rice. Not even kidding. I mean, I'm surprised sometimes when I look in the mirror that I have a reflection. To be honest with you. Beth Castrodale is with me today. Beth, thank you so much for being on the podcast and spending some time with us.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I'm really looking forward to it.
Castrodale is what's the origin of that? Is that like Cuban and NASCAR? Like
Oh, it's funny.
the
It's actually Italian. It's Italian. So like the old, and I think in the old country they would say Castrodale, but now, it's been anglicized as Castrodale. So.
All right. My last name's Baroni, so we got the Italians
Oh,
here
yeah,
tonight.
that's
Oh, it's
right.
beautiful.
Paisan.
So let's get into this. You are an author, but you also seems like the creepier side of things. I'm gonna let you go ahead and introduce yourself, unless I nailed it with that little sentence there. But who are you, Beth? What do you do?
Yeah, so I am a novelist. I've had lots of day jobs in the past, writing and editing. But my love and my passion, what I'm most focused on now is novel writing, and I have published 4 novels. They're kind of like a lot of times, people would call them literary fiction, but they all have sort of a certain bent to them. Like my previous novel was kind of like a mystery suspense novel, and this one is actually a supernatural kind of a ghost story. So and it's the kind of story, when I was a kid, I loved writing ghost stories, and I've always loved spooky stories. And, I think it took me a long time to get around to writing one as an adult. I think because I was worried I wouldn't be good enough. I wouldn't be as good as the stories that I enjoyed, reading and
Sure.
watching and all that. But, that's kind of the short version of my story. But in terms of the Halloween season, there's nothing better to me than a good spooky story. So
No, I'm right with you. I'm curious to what your stories were like when you were young, when you were writing. Like, what, what kind of things would you write down? Just like, ghosts in drapes, like people in drapes, or like, did you go all out and draw some scary
yeah,
stuff?
it's funny that well, often it was like haunted houses or castles, and I like to illustrate my like I would do like little miniature books that I would illustrate, and often it would be the kids who wander into a creepy house or this abandoned castle, and they encounter all these spirits, and they try to overcome them, and I think like sometimes there would be like the kids would have to I mean, they'd have to destroy them. So I worry that if the school psychologist saw some of the bloody sketches that I did, I
Yeah,
would have been in
your
trouble.
kid's nuts.
Right. Exactly. Your kid needs help like immediately. So I'm glad. My parents were actually really chill about it. They're like, oh wow, but I feel like if certain people have seen it, there might have been an intervention. I guess.
Y- I like that about your parents, that they just kind of like let you be creative. It's what you like. It's what
Yeah.
made you happy, right?
Totally. I was so grateful
Yeah.
for that. I think they were glad that I liked to read and write and draw and all that. I was very lucky to have that, those parents for sure.
So what fascinated you about the ghost stories? Like, do you remember when it first clicked into your head, like why you became obsessed with it?
It's funny. I think it's hard for me to remember like the first like scary movie or show or book that I read, but I just remember like feeling like it had effect on me like no other kind of like entertainment. And I just thought, like, I don't know why that is. I wonder if it's just like sort of like the unknown or the idea, kind of the mystery of like, do
Yeah.
ghosts really exist and what
Yeah.
there's this whole mysterious world out there that we could think about. So I think just as a kid, I was equally spooked out, but also fascinated at the same time. Being scared and fascinated is kind of an interesting combination, a fun
It's so
combination.
stimulating.
Yeah, exactly, exactly.
Oh, yeah.
So,
Yeah. So when did you take it to the next step? Like, did you join any like book writing competitions, or did you show your friends what you were writing? How do you move on?
Yeah, so early in the early days, so it took me a long, after my childhood, writing of ghost stories, I didn't really get it, do writing in the supernatural. I did more like, I wrote short stories and kind of like, kind of the literary types of stories. It was kind of a from high school and then even in college, I would try to get input on my writing. I was in a few writing workshops and I took some creative writing courses and I was just getting a lot of feedback on my writing, so that really helped me a lot. It helped me grow as a writer, and I really, I was really delayed though about submitting my writing. Like I think part of it was just being afraid of rejection, and it took me a while. Like I started sending short stories out, and then it was just kind of a run. Like I would say, like in the last, I published like 4 novels in like 7 years. So like the last 7 years
Whoa.
have been, partly that's been work. Like I've been able to really cut down. I had a full time job. Now I just freelance. And
Right.
so it's just allowed me to really, finally, get stuff out into the world and really, be really like, focused on this, and I'm very, very lucky for that. So yeah, I've just been submitting stuff and, I've been lucky to get things published and I have been able to win some awards too, which has been really nice. So, yeah.
That's
So,
good for confidence. Oh my god, yeah, congratulations on the awards. That'll
oh,
keep you
thank
going. I
you.
mean, you're gonna keep going anyways, but now that's like, that's kinda like a reinforcement, right? Like, what I'm writing is people enjoy it, people like this.
Yeah, it's really nice. It really is super nice because I mean, I think anyone that you would interview who's a writer or probably any type of artist, there's a lot of rejection. So that's something that comes
Yeah,
along with it. Like you have to
totally.
get, I think something that you learn as you're, developing as a writer is that rejection is part of the game and no one can avoid rejection. So it definitely feels good when you have acceptances or you get some, you get some recognition for what someone thinks, was you did a good job on. So
That's why you have to make sure that you love and you're passionate about what kind of art you're putting out there because like you said, the rejection is going to come. You cannot sidestep that. It's gonna hit you
mm.
flat in the chest. It will.
Definitely, and
And
even
if you
hitting
love
even
what you
when
do enough,
yeah.
I mean, sure, it hurts a little bit, but it makes you happy what you're writing, what you're doing, what you're putting out there artistically. So you're gonna keep doing it.
Yeah, absolutely, and I know before we started up here, you were talking about hockey and everything, and I feel like even in sports, right, you're gonna lose games, right? I mean, you're not you apply for jobs, you don't you job you really want, you don't get it. I feel like we all know that feeling, right? So
Right.
you just have to kind of keep going, and if you have that interest, you'll keep at it, right?
Yeah, and what better interest than, goblins and ghouls and ghosts? I'm right with you on that. I mean, I'm curious, do you have like in your mind, do you think you know where the origins of like Dracula or ghost stories came from? I don't know how much research you've done on this, but I'm just curious if you know.
Yeah,
I
I
don't
mean,
know.
some of them are like I think with Dracula, there was a legend around like with Vlad the Impaler and all that. Like it started in real history, but then it kind of took off from historical stories and spun off from there. But I don't know. My sense of at least for I'll just kind of speak for myself. I feel like it's kind of again kind of the origins of like you know the unknown and things that that we can't explain and what I think a lot of times we're writers and artists of different types will try to speculate about what is that unknown space like and what's lurking there and what are the scary things that are there that we can explore um, and kind of bring out of the darkness and make a story around it or I even think about the old the legends about like when there were eclipses back in ancient times. Can you imagine what people might have been thinking about what was going on?
No. I would think the world is ending.
Right, exactly, and you kind of think
Or
about
snow
like
falling like for the first time. You would think the clouds are falling probably or
right.
the sky is melting.
Right. Exactly. Like that kind of stuff. And I feel like as humans, I think we're drawn to make wherever there's a gap in information, I think we're kind of we feel like driven to fill that in. And I think with scary stories, we think about, kind of imagine some of the most horrifying things that could be in that unknown space. And there you can have some pretty scary stories.
Yeah, that's fascinating. Yeah. Yeah, we try to just fill in that void. I'm so curious about it though because it's like, did someone see something and that's like where the story came from? Like maybe they're miscuing what they saw and then
Mhm.
like how does the folklore all begin? Like someone because it's pretty freaking descriptive, like
Right.
Dracula, it's pretty descriptive.
Right.
Like goblins and ghouls or like Satan even or along those lines, it's pretty it's descriptive. So like were you, were you seeing something in the shadows? Did something tease you and then your brain filled in the rest and like how does it get started?
Yeah, well, it's funny with ghost stories, I think in particular, at least like, I've read a ton of them, I've fiction and then accounts that people, have said that something has really happened to them. And there seem to
Yeah.
be ghost stories that get repeated
Yeah.
over and over again. Like, for instance, think of the kind of poltergeist phenomenon where you have kind of you know, uh, some kind of invisible spirit that's throwing stuff around or making things disappear, reappear,
Right.
destroying or smashing things. And then you have like, kind of what we call the classical apparitions, where it could be this smoky kind of dark figure or like an actual kind of full bodied apparition. And you hear these stories repeated over and over and over again. And, I've tended to be a skeptic, but I feel like there's kind of like, a reason why. I mean, it could be that, there's certain ways that humans perceive their environment in the same way that these stories come up again. Or heck, maybe if there are real if there is such a thing as ghosts or apparitions or whatever, maybe there's certain patterns in the way that they appear. I have a feeling that there's a reason why we have so many of the same types of reports and stories about ghosts. I mean, there's some kind of
Yes.
pattern, be that human perception or something that's actually going on, who knows.
Yeah, like from a story, let's say like the first one ever seen or told was 2000 years ago and to still be relevant today seems like something's going on.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. And it's interesting how, so many, I mean, I'm thinking about the books, but also movies where you see a lot of the same type of, well, you think about all the movies about like, for instance, like you're possessed by a demon of some sort. Like how many movies have
Those
been
are the
made about
ones that
that?
get me the most. Those religious ones. I'm not even that religious, but when
Right.
I see like someone being taken over, possessed, or
Yeah.
like some exorcism,
Yep.
that's the one that does it for me.
Yeah.
Oh.
Pretty scary, huh? Like,
Yeah.
and maybe it's something to do with it. It's almost a feeling like it's something that's could you almost get a sense that there's a normal person going about their business, and how horrifying is it that they become possessed, right?
Yeah, yeah, just becomes something completely different in the snap of a finger. I don't like that. Is there a genre that gets you, freaks you out the most?
It's funny. I think I really like the psychological horror movies where it's not. I don't like like the bloody slashery type of things. I like the more
Right.
like slow brewing kind of scary movies. I don't know. Did you ever see the others with Nicole Kidman? Came out, I want to
I
say like
have a
around
while ago. Yeah, I
2000.
have. Uh-huh.
I won't give it
Yeah.
away just in case you decide to see it, but it happens. It's kind of a story of a family where they feel like something is going on. It's around the time of the Second World War, and they feel like they're in this house and there's a bunch of strange phenomena going on, but there's a twist in it that is just, it turns you upside down, and you just, when you see it, you just feel like gobsmacked by it. And but it's not like there are scary elements in it, but it's not like things are constantly popping out of the shadows. It's just sort of like a one of these spooky movies, and then there's this revelation at the end that just throws you for a loop. um, that is a really good one. And something like Midsummer, like folk horror, I think that's really interesting too. To
Ooh,
be
that's
the
a real spooky one, huh?
Did you see that one?
Oh yeah. I didn't know what I was getting myself into. Someone just recommended it and I was like, "All right, let's put this on." Then I'm like, "What the hell is
Yeah.
going on?" Oh my god.
Yup, yup. I mean, wasn't that, I mean, I think part of that was like, talk about the unknown, like the the main character, the young woman, she has no idea what she's getting in for, and then all these layers get unwrapped about where she really is and what's happening, and
Uh-huh.
it's just terrifying.
Oh, it's so good though. They did a wonderful job with that.
Yeah,
That's the one
that
that's
one will
it takes
stick with
place
you,
in
right?
Sweden or something.
What was that?
It takes place in Sweden, I
Yes,
believe.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
Oh, it's scary, isn't it?
Yeah, it's like every 10 minutes, what else is gonna happen? Now what? Now what? That's a great one. Do these inspire you to write books the way you do? Like a good movie? Or where does it stem from, I guess, when you're doing your writing?
Yeah, they come from all kinds of places. I mean, I think of movies, I think of like books too. Like to me, when
Yeah.
I'm writing a scary story, or when I wrote this last novel, like to me, I think like setting is character. Like I think like one of the a great novel that I really think about when I wrote my novel is The Haunting of Hill House, where the house in that novel is a character, and it might be the most frightening character in the whole novel. And so I think like with my um, with my novel, I was trying to really think about, which is called The Inhabitants, by the way. With The Inhabitants, I was trying to think about the setting, the house at the center of the novel as a character, and then trying to weave in details that make it, a troubling presence. And I think like, so The Haunting of Hill House was a big influence. I think of like classic novel, The Turn of the Screw by Henry James, where setting is also a big element there. I love Stephen King's works.
Me too.
Carrie, I think especially his first novel really struck me. There's so many
Do you
different
like any of his
influences.
new books?
I have gotten a little behind with with him. I mean, I think I'd love to read more of them, but I've kind of some of his newer stuff I have not read. Have you read any of his newer things? Or
Yeah, it seems like when he stopped drinking and doing cocaine, the books kind of, like they're not as good as like a Carrie.
Oh, okay, yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
okay,
it's
yeah,
unfortunate, but I mean, you can definitely tell that he was under some kind of influence with those classic books. I mean, oh my God.
yeah. I mean, there's so many of them. Like, there's what is Salem's Lot really creeped me out. I don't know if you
Oh
like
yeah.
The Stand.
Love that book.
That's a
Yeah, that's
great
a long
book.
one.
There's so many of them, but
Cujo.
yes, yeah, they're just they're wonderful books, and I think he does such a good job with empathy, like making us empathize with the characters at the center of the story too, right? Even though all this horrible stuff is going
Right,
on, we
right. And the character
empathize.
growth too. Yeah. Yeah. What makes a ghost story compelling? Do you think it is like that empathy, stuff like that?
Yeah, I think empathy is a huge part. Actually, there's a writer, his name is Gabino Iglesias, and he basically said, I think I'm going to maybe butcher the quote, but he basically said, without empathy, horror fails. And his
Whoa.
idea is that, like, if we don't care about the characters and what their lives, where they are in their lives and what's going on, we're not going to care about, we're not going to be as invested when the really scary stuff starts happening. And that that's actually a really crucial part of I think of
Oh,
any
that's
novel actually,
fascinating.
but I think sometimes in any horror novel that doesn't account for that is gonna I think it's gonna lose readers, and lose interest on behalf of readers. I think having a great setting is really important, and I also think like some of the psychological aspects where there are the protagonist kind of starts to doubt their judgment of things too. Like
Right.
I feel like when they feel like, I don't know if I can really trust my judgment or what's going on. Is this real or is it not? That you really get into the character's head in terms of what is going on and how they're processing it. And you're kind of like fearful right alongside them.
That kind of humanizes it in a
Yeah.
sense because that's such a human characteristic.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. I think it really is.
Yeah.
And especially
Wow.
if we're kind of right alongside the protagonist with the mystery, right? Like we kind of feel for them. We're like, gosh, I don't know what's going on either. And you're kind of side by side with them trying to figure out what's going on and being exposed to whatever they are. Um, and I get maybe that's part of empathy too. And and I always like too when there are mysterious figures that aren't necessarily ghosts in the story. Like I always love, like my novel has this and some other books do, but where you have like a spooky house novel, but there's like a housekeeper or something who seems to know more about what's going on than
Oh,
the protagonist does. You know what I mean?
yeah.
And they kind of have a sense, they're kind of in the shadows and kind of like mediating between the protagonist and then the mysteries of the house. And like I always think of a
Yeah.
really great book, in my opinion, is Rebecca, and it's also is made into a movie. And there's the housekeeper character, Mrs. Danvers, is just so chilling. I mean, she's just so, you feel like she just knows everything about everything about the house, everything about Rebecca, and it's not a good thing, Um,
Yeah, she's like this missing link
yeah,
that connects
exactly.
everything. She's like a key, like a skeleton key.
Yep, exactly.
Oh.
Exactly like a skeleton key. Like I personally, I mean, that's not in every scary story, but I love that element too.
Yeah, you could take it so many places. I mean, geez, just what you just mentioned in the past like 5 minutes, that's so much detail. Like, how do you come up with characters? Oh my, you have to like know these characters almost as if they are real. Like you personally know them. How
Yeah,
do you
I
go
mean, I feel
about
like I
doing
get
that?
to be that way. It takes some time, like sometimes in the early stages of writing, I'll just kind of like write like a bunch of ideas about a certain character, who I think they might be, what where they are in their lives, and kind of just sketch out a bunch of stuff. And then I do try to get to know them. And I mean, in the case of the inhabitants, I kind of started with the house. I knew that I wanted this creepy house, and I wanted it to be, I had it designed by this architect who believed that he could influence the mind of people, but in what he thought were beneficial ways. But the house has some really screwy, kind of creepy details. And I decided to have the protagonist be an artist because I felt like she would be someone who would be really attuned to visual details and really be sensitive to that. So I knew that I wanted to have an artist. And from there, it kind of went off running. Like she's like kind of I figured she's at kind of a rough stage in her life. She's just had a split with her partner, and she has a young daughter who's she's dealing with her. But then her mother, who she really loves, has just died, so she's grieving. And then she moves
Oh
into this
man.
weird house, so there's all these different, um kind of, she's there's kind of stressors on her. And then when the weird stuff starts happening in this house, and it just kind of, she's kind of in a really vulnerable position. But yeah, to get to her character, I just spent a lot of time like thinking, writing, sketching things out. And then I feel like once you put a character in a situation where you start to get a sense of how they're going to react. If you're really rooted in them, you kind of they kind of just become embodied and activated by the setting, and then the kind of situations that you immerse them in. So
When
kind of a
you're
complicated
when
answer, but
No, it's a great answer, and I have some follow-ups with that. It was really wonderful. So, when you're deep into this process, do you find it hard because that's got to be taking a toll on you mentally? I don't know how well you are from like when you're immersed within the writing, and then you can just put a pause to it, stop, and then continue on with your real life. Because you have to go through some dark places. It seems like when you're creating a horror story, like someone's mom just died, and like someone, like people are getting murdered. Or there's like horror happening, like that can take a toll. So I'm just curious: is there does it take a toll on you personally
Mm.
from writing and then moving on to your real life?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, I feel like sometimes it does, it can be tiring. But then sometimes I feel like when I'm really in a story, I mean, you hear that word, that expression used called flow, where you feel like
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I'm not even aware of myself when I'm really writing, when I'm really deeply into a story. I'm all about it. It's almost like I'm living in a different world. So
Oh, that's
I
awesome.
forget
Kind of like that.
I don't really know. I forget my awareness of myself sometimes. I mean, sometimes that doesn't. If I'm really blocked someday, I'm like, oh, this just isn't happening. But when my writing is at its best, I kind of
Oh,
lose myself, and I think in a good way. But then it can almost, I mean, sometimes getting at what you were saying, it can feel like kind of physically tiring. Sometimes, like if I've had a long writing day and my brain has really been immersed, sometimes it's just, just I feel physically tired from it. Actually, it's not just my
Sure.
brain.
Yeah, totally.
So
So what
yeah,
types of things do you do to relax?
well, I run, so that's good. I like to,
Oh yeah, running's a big one.
isn't it? Yeah. Do you run?
Oh my God.
Are you a
Y-
runner too, or
Oh yeah, yeah, I run. Yeah, that's like a vacation.
isn't it though? Like it helps, doesn't
Oh
it?
yeah.
Feel like I feel like sometimes it just makes you just to me it reduces stress so much, you know.
Totally. It's insane. I almost want to create like this app or something where you can like while you're running, you can write like because all I have such wonderful ideas. I feel like a freaking genius sometimes when I'm running, and then by the time I'm done, after 3 miles, it's all gone. I'm like, wow, that was amazing. What was I thinking of? But at the time, it was like brilliant, and I couldn't write it down.
Yeah, no, it's true. I mean, it's interesting because I think that's common. Like with I get a lot of my ideas when I'm not in front of the computer. I'm running or I'm walking or
Yeah.
I'm. I think there's something about the. I don't know. What do I know? I'm not a neuroscientist, but I feel like there is something about that period, right, where our brains, where we're not quote unquote on task, but we get these ideas, right? Like,
Yeah. It's almost like your flow state when you're
yeah,
writing. It's just like you just are, and then it's like your mind goes to this happy place. I know some people don't like it, like running. I get it. But it takes time to develop. I feel like you have to get the stamina, all that physical stuff. But once you're able to like pace out and put yourself on auto control or autopilot, that's where like these thoughts start coming.
yes, absolutely. Yeah, I think too, maybe, I don't know how you feel about it, but it's almost like you have to be in like steady mode. Like if you're just starting out running, if you haven't run before and you're just starting out, you might be more focused
Yeah.
on, I'm worn
Oh,
out. But
yeah,
if you're
exactly.
in a
Yep.
certain condition and you're on your routine run, then I feel like you're kind of freed up,
Yeah.
right? To You don't focus on your body or like, oh, it hurts to go up this hill or whatever.
I wonder if that's got to be with everything. Like some yoga people, like people are just eat like they've been doing it for so long they can just meditate. They can just instantly get there. While for someone that's just starting out, it's like I'm focused on how non-flexible my hip flexors are right now,
Hmm.
and I can't
Yep.
concentrate.
Exactly, exactly. And I think whenever I'm learning something new, right? Like sometimes I'm like, I can't even, it's all about trying to figure out A, B, C, and D. I can't, there's nothing else that my brain will accommodate or my body will
Right.
accommodate.
Right.
And so I think like with running, I think it almost has to be, if you're being creative or thinking while you're running, you almost have to be at a certain level where you're just not focused on your body as much.
Yeah, I do stand-up comedy sometimes, and a lot of my bits and a lot of the like some comedy videos that I come up with, that like almost 100% come on the run,
Oh, wow.
mid-run. Yeah, it's so you're the same way? Like you get a lot of your ideas when you're running for your books or like more details about your book?
Yeah, definitely. That definitely comes to
How
me.
far do you run?
Yeah, absolutely. Sometimes when I'm walking too, but I try to go when I get home, I try to write them down. And maybe you try to do this too with your comedy where, I'm like, oh, I gotta try to remember that. And then even just,
Uh-huh.
scribbling down a few things so you could remember it. Because I find like if I don't write it down, then it'll evaporate pretty so quickly.
Yeah, yeah. Do you ever have the moments when you wake up, like you have an idea why you're sleeping?
Sometimes I do, but you know what? It's so awful. Like I don't remember I know, like, sometimes I wake up and I'm like, "Oh my god, that was a really weird dream I had." I know it was weird, but then I can't
Yeah,
remember the details. I mean, very rarely I'll remember, specifics, but a lot of times they're nothing that I can so far that I can really process in anything I would use in my writing. A lot of it's I think a lot of times
gotcha.
I'm just processing weird stuff from my life that shows up,
Yeah.
but I haven't been
Well,
able to. I think some writers have been able to do that, but I think so far I haven't really been able to do that.
right.
Um,
It's hard. Over the past year and a half, whenever an idea strikes that I think is good, if I'm in a deep sleep, it's 4 o'clock in the morning, I wake up, grab my phone, write it down, go back to sleep.
Oh, wow. So you have
I don't
stuff.
want them to escape me. Yeah, I have seriously, like, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of pages of just ideas that come to me in the night, and
Wow.
hopefully we'll get to them eventually, but yeah, I started waking up or, like, whatever I'm doing, even if I'm awake in the shower, I'll stop my shower and go write it down because it evaporates. I don't know where the idea comes from, but it's so hard to recapture. It's almost impossible to recapture. I don't wanna lose it.
Yeah, but that's amazing though that you have stuff that in your sleep that you will wait. I mean, that is to me that is just astonishing. Like, is it stuff for your comedy or is it just like general
It's
stuff?
I
Or
mean, it'll be inventions, it'll be a lot of comedy, a lot of skits to do, just it'll just snap in my head. Like, just it's almost like a life form. Like, it just comes into my head, and I'm like, "Alright, gotta wake up, gotta write this down because I will not
wow,
remember it. I know I won't."
that's extraordinary. I mean, it's interesting. I mean, at some point, maybe I don't know. Maybe you would go into a sleep study or sleep lab because they might be interested in creativity with sleep, right? Like,
Oh, yeah, I'm sure I mean, we live in a crazy world. We don't know, like, half of what's going on around us, right?
yeah,
I'm
yes,
curious, I wonder.
but
Yeah. So I was reading your bio, and I understand that you had a head injury? Is that right?
yeah, I did.
Yeah, you were saying studies, like sleep studies, so that's why it kinda reclicked in my head. I wanted to ask you about that,
Yeah, it's
if that's
interesting.
okay.
I'm actually in a study at Ohio State University Medical Center. I had a traumatic brain injury, and I got medical care there, and they actually enrolled me in a study. So every so often, I get phone calls and I get asked a bunch of questions about my life and different things, and they have me do some memory testing and so on. But yeah, but it was just a freak accident. It was like God, was it 15 years ago? I'm losing track. But anyhow, it was a freak accident. I've never fainted before in my life. And I fainted in a
Mhm.
supermarket and I fractured my skull. And
Whoa.
I was just out of it. I had days where I didn't remember anything. And then when I got up, when I got up, I was okay, but I wasn't firing on all cylinders for a while and I
Of
had to get some
course.
therapy. And, eventually I didn't think I would, I wasn't sure if I would be able to, write again. I was having actually trouble reading at first, but I had,
Oh,
therapy
wow.
and everything else. And I really credit running because I was a runner. I was a runner when this happened. And I think the fact that I was in decent physical condition helped me recover faster. I believe it. I mean,
Oh, I
there's no
believe it
proof of that,
100%. Totally.
but I believe it. And anyhow, I'm very lucky now to be, I feel recovered. I mean, the only thing my sense of smell isn't all back. That's like one thing that is still a issue, but by and large, I feel incredibly lucky that that I wasn't just rendered incapable of taking care of myself or reading or writing or anything like that. So
Right. Hey, sometimes not being able to smell something's a blessing, so
I know that's true. That's true. But the sad thing is, I mean, it's better now. I definitely haven't lost all my soul, but sometimes your sense of taste, isn't what
Yeah.
it used to be. But it's like it's of all the different things that could have gone wrong.
Right.
I
You're
feel
still
lucky.
able to write, and your reading came back, which is magnificent. So what kinda studies do they do?
It's funny. It's like I should find out about how many subjects are in the study, but the last interview I had, which was only about a month ago, they said it's one of the biggest studies, or the largest study that's being done on TBI, and they're going to be releasing the results before too long, I think. So
Whoa.
I'm going to keep an eye out for it, and they're
Yeah.
just interviewing patients about long term effects, and also kind of how they how like different how age, I think physical
Mhm.
health, education,
Mhm.
all these different things affect, the TBI outcomes and everything. So I'm really interested. I mean, when I spoke to the interviewer, I said I would love to get the results, and so I think I'm eager to see what they're learning from all of us over these
Oh, yeah.
years. So, and it's a pretty long. I mean, every time I'm on the phone with them, I feel like it's close to an hour of conversation with them every time they interview me. So it's it seems like from what I've seen, it's pretty detailed. So
Is it are the conversations, is it them just point blank asking you questions, or is it more conversational?
it's more questions. Like they'll have a
Yeah.
question, like I'm trying to remember, but like, how would you rate how, you function on these different levels? And they'll say, do you strongly agree, disagree? Like where you pick multiple choice, that kind of thing.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
And then there's a few open-ended questions, but a lot of it is multiple choice. And then at the end, they have, the questions about like they'll like say 15 different things in a sequence, and they'll ask you to repeat them, and then they'll wait a while and then ask you a few more questions. Then they'll go back to that and say, how many of those 15 things can you remember?
Oh
They'll ask
yeah,
you to
I've
do
been
some
through some of those.
different like simple math things that you have to, you know, and they're
Yeah.
measuring your short-term memory,
Right. Yep.
cognition, all these different
Mm-hmm.
things.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's interesting. And I always get a little like, I feel like, oh man, I really some of them like I'm really losing it,
Bomb that one.
but
They're gonna lock me up and throw away the key.
right, exactly, that's what I feel like sometimes. But it's good. I'm glad that they're I'm just hoping that it'll help other people, with all these results, that they'll be able to, make some discoveries that will help the field and help other people, I hope so.
Oh yeah. Yeah, that's an important one. That's really important because there's so much CTE, which is the concussion
Oh, it's
protocols, with the
terrible.
sports. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
So what they can do, I mean, geez. I've had a bunch of
absolutely.
people on the podcast where we talked about stuff like that, about the head injuries and what works. Like a lot of I had some people on talking about psychedelics, how that it's like revolutionary. It's like r- so imagine that your brain has like the connectors, okay? And it's like this ski path, like it's so engraved, all of the connectors. And if you get a concussion, like it kind of scrambles those connections up. So
Mm.
what psychedelics do is it's almost like adding new fresh snow powder
Huh.
over it. So then you can start to re-groove those connectors the way that you need them to be or want them to be. So
Ah,
it's almost like starting over again.
that's interesting. I hadn't heard about that application of psychedelics. That's really
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah, it's a fascinating topic. I have those guys on all the time. I'm just so curious about it because I've had a lot of head injuries myself. I mean, have you
Oh,
was this just the one that you had?
this was just the one. I mean, I've had like,
Yeah,
where you knock your head on, you get like a goosebump or
right.
something from just knocking
Yeah.
your head on like, but
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, but this
Not
was like
going out
the
tonight.
only like a bad one. But with yours, have it been like sports injuries or?
Yeah, a lot of sports injuries, a lot of hockey injuries, but there was one where I went to well, this is hockey related too, but I was watching a hockey game. It was the Blackhawks against the Detroit Red Wings in a it was a playoff game, and me and my friends went to Detroit to go watch our Blackhawks. We're wearing Blackhawks uniforms, and people on the podcast have heard this, so I'll try to keep it brief. Um, the game had ended, and the Blackhawks lost. So I went to go walk down these narrow stairs, and someone behind me hit me in the head with a rag. So it was like a rally rag, like a little towel. So I went to go look behind him, and he was just kind of mouthing off at me like the Blackhawks suck. I'm like, all right.
Oh,
So I went to go finish walking down the stairs, and the next thing you know, I'm face first about 10 steps down into a metal chair. And this
oh,
what happened is this dude kicked me in my back from behind as hard as he could, and I flew down all these stairs and banged my head on
oh
the
no.
seat, and I broke my orbital bone on my face. And
God,
I had to yeah, the paramedics came. I had to spend the night in a Detroit hospital, which was just something else. But I mean,
that's
yeah, nothing was ever
terrible.
done. There was no I wasn't like no one got the guy's name. There was no security, so nothing ever came of it.
Oh.
I had to pay for all the bills. It was expensive as hell. Yeah, that was a nasty one.
That's just terrible. I mean, it's awful what happened to you, but it's awful about like human behavior too. Like, I mean, I know people get upset about sports, but I
Damn
mean,
sporting event.
come on. I mean, it's
Relax.
just like I mean, you could have gotten killed, and you
I
could have had
think because
serious.
I had some alcohol in me, I was a little bit,
Oh,
lubed up. So
yeah.
I think if I honestly God, I think if I was sober, I might have broken my neck.
God.
But
Oh,
yeah,
that's
I agree though. The human behavior is just insane. They're like animals. It's just a sporting event, man. Chill.
it is. I wonder if I mean, I've seen it sometimes with sporting events and other events. Sometimes when people are drunk, like if he was drunk, maybe his behavior, not to excuse him at all, but I
Right.
wonder if
Yeah, he was drunk, I'm sure.
he could
Yeah.
have been,
I was a
his bad behavior could have been exacerbated by drinking too. Who knows? But
Of course, yeah. I was a few moments away from being a ghost in that damn arena. You've been writing about me.
I'm glad you're not. I would have liked talking to you with you as a ghost or whatever too. But I'm glad you're not a ghost.
Me
That's
too.
just. I mean, it just is just. I'm just glad you're okay. I mean, did you have any sort of cognitive deficits after that at all that you could determine or?
No, not that I could determine. You know what? From I basically came into this life with a concussion. When I was 6 months old, I fell downstairs. I was in a walker. Call it bad parenting or whatever. I don't know who the hell was supposed to watch me, but I fell down like 5 stairs. Me and stairs do not go along.
Oh,
But on my face, and I had 2 black eyes. I think I broke my nose.
oh,
And I was like 6 months.
oh my God.
Yeah, so I don't know. I'll never be able to know like like what my brain was really supposed to be like. Cause I'm sure that shook it up a little bit, but I'm happy. I'm able to speak and communicate. So it's not all bad, but I'm always curious sometimes, like what my life path would be if that didn't happen. Like, would I still be the same person I am now, or would I be dramatically different?
Yeah. Well, you sound very with it, and I mean, it sounds like everything's worked out. But I know what you mean. I mean, it does. We all wonder, right, about different paths of our lives and how these different things
Yeah,
could come into effect. But gosh, here's hoping that you don't have any more stair falls or anything
seriously,
else.
yeah, yeah. Just a flat for me. I'm not getting any more stairs. Yeah, I'll just live on a ranch.
Right. Exactly. And to have like you know, I don't know, just put padding everywhere or something. Right?
Just wear a helmet.
Wear a helmet, right? Exactly. Because yeah, I mean, it's like you can't, or bubble wrap, right? You can wear those little bubble wrap
Yeah,
things.
Bubble Boy. They got a movie about that.
Oh man.
Yeah. So back to paranormal. Are you a big believer like in real life that like you can communicate with the dead or anything along those lines? Want to
It's
know what
funny,
your
like
real thoughts
I've
are.
always been like a skeptic, but I feel like there's so many stories about like people having experiences. I feel like I don't know, I feel like for so many people to report report experiences like this. And actually there is a if you look it up, there's a there at the University of Virginia, they have a division of perceptual studies where they're looking into the idea, the theory that our consciousness can somehow survive our bodily death. And they've looked at all different kinds of like near death experiences and
Yeah,
kids
yeah.
who report, having experiences of a previous life, these kind of different things,
Yes, yeah.
after death communications. It's very interesting. And I mean, I think what I really think is cool is that they're approaching it from a scientific point of view about like, yes, we need to have skepticism, but have an open mind, like to just say,
Sh- Yeah.
no, there's no consciousness that survives death, and that's just the way it is. Instead, they have a more
Hmm.
open-minded approach of like, well, why don't we explore what the possibilities are? So I feel like, I believe in the scientific method. I'm skeptical, but I also feel like I want to be open-minded about different possibilities of, really seriously looking into this stuff. Like I think it has some merit, So
Sure, yeah, that's a wonderful way to analyze that. I mean, who really has the correct answer right now, anyways? So it's like it almost seems in our best interest to have an open mind. There's no definitive answer. No one knows
yeah,
yet, and
that's how I
I'm
feel
happy
about
about the
it.
science too.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, absolutely. And I feel like that's where, I think that, I'm hoping that we're learning more as time goes on about what's possible. And, like so many frontiers in science, I feel like there's always new things that are, coming out and being discovered. And, so I feel like, you know, I want to keep an open mind for sure.
Have you ever had a personal experience
Yeah, I've had a
with?
couple weird ones. Like,
Yeah.
I this was like years ago, but I used to live on Cape Cod, and I lived in this house by the ocean. It was like an attached apartment to my landlord's apartment, and it was kind of weird in that, like, one day I left for work, and this is like my landlord would always tell me, like, I didn't have a roommate, no one else had my key but my landlord, and he always told me, like, I'll always let you know when I come into the house, whatever. But I came home from work, and my thermostats were turned all the way up, and my casement windows in the upstairs were all wide open, and they're not they weren't the kind that easily got flung open by the wind. Like, they had little, like,
Right.
sealed locked things, so you couldn't just the wind
Uh-huh.
just couldn't open them. And I remember
Yeah.
my landlord actually saying, do you mind closing the windows before you go to work? And I didn't know. I was so tongue tied. I didn't know how to say, like, I didn't do it, like, I just said okay. And
Yeah.
then,
It
like, a couple
was
weeks.
Margaret the ghost.
Right, exactly. I thought, I'm not going to say that because he'll just think I'm loony. But then a couple weeks later, like, it happened again, and I was kind of freaked
Oh.
out, and I mentioned it to a couple of close friends at work, and they said, one woman said, maybe I can burn sage or something, and I said, oh, that's okay. And then that was it. That was it for that. But it was just a little weird. Like, I didn't know. I had no idea what was going on, and then that was probably the biggest, the creepiest thing that happened.
So
But
what do you make of that before we move on?
it's funny. I almost feel like I got pranked. Like, but I mean, I don't know. Like, I mean, maybe, like, it makes me think of like poltergeists when they're kind of like having fun with people, and it's like your shoes are untied, and then they kind of whack you, you know what I mean? Like that.
Right. Right. Yeah.
Like that kind of thing. Like, that's what I felt like.
Yeah.
Like, I felt like a joke. It felt like a practical joke more than anything. So, but who knows? I'll just kind of speculate forever on what might have been going on, or maybe somebody was able to get into the house somehow, even though the door. I mean, there wasn't any signs of, like, the doors were locked. I don't know. Who knows what was going on? But that kind of creeped
Nothing
me
was
out.
missing.
But
Nothing was missing.
oh no, nothing at all. Everything else was in place. That was it. Yeah, just thermostats up and then windows open. So it was
Yeah, that
weird.
almost does sound like a prank, huh?
Yeah.
Oh, that's ooh. And the chilies just thinking about it.
Yeah,
And
it was
that's
creepy.
like on the ocean, right? By the ocean?
Yeah, it was nice. I mean, it was a beautiful place. Like, you could hear the ocean at night, and it was beautiful, but it was a little bit like, you know, um kind of spooky too, like,
There's a lot of energy that comes. That's what I'm getting at, is like with the ocean, there's so much energy. It's such a
right.
big body of water, and so much energy comes with the ocean. And it's like when you hear about spirits, it's almost like it's something's energy.
Hmm.
So did something else ever happen to you when you weren't by the ocean?
No, I mean, it's funny, like, one kind of, it isn't really a ghost thing, but like when I was researching my book, um, I thought I'm going to write some articles that are related to my book somehow. So I thought, like, why don't I visit a medium just to see what this is like? Because I thought,
Yeah.
just out of curiosity. So I went to one medium, and I describe it to my friends as, like, it's almost like I went to a house party where a bunch of guests show up and I didn't know any of them. Like, the medium kind of, like, she'd say, "Do you
That's a good way to put it.
it was totally like that, though. It was like if you went and the nice people come in,
Right.
right, and you nod and say hello, and but you don't
Uh-huh.
recognize any of them. And
Right.
the medium kept describing them, and I think she was getting impatient with me because I said, like, no. And so she said, well, sometimes maybe people who, if you're not really given to believe in this stuff, maybe you're more resistant. And I kind of, like, quietly said in my brain, like, I don't think so. So I kind of wrote
Right.
that off. And then I thought for the second medium, I'm going to try to do a little more research. And I looked into, there was a resource at the Division of Perceptual Studies at UVA, and they had some research that they'd done vetting mediums, where they did, like, these. blinded studies about people's abilities. And I found a medium from that list, and I had to go on a waiting list to wait for her for like 6 months. And when
Wow.
we got on the phone, I mean, she just said a bunch of like, I mean, it was really chillingly uncanny things like, both of my parents have died, and she basically went down the list of like what happened to them. And this was something that wasn't on the, internet or anything. She said stuff about, things about our relationships that were spot on. She said that, she said my mom, did artwork, and she described a drawing that my mom did to a T that's hanging in my house. She described like, I
This
wear my
person's never been to your house, or you have no
no
relationship with this
relationship at
person?
all. She said like
Whoa.
you have your mother's wedding ring on your hand, which I do. All this stuff that was so
Whoa.
specific that it just made me, you know, it just kind of gave me the chills. So, who knows? It made me do if that was kind of one of the things that made me wonder about the whole consciousness surviving us and in death. Like maybe there's some truth to that, but I don't know what to say about it, Jay. Other, it just kind of really made it kind of dropped my jaw a bit, as we might
Yeah, I'll tell you something. I think we found a suspect for who opened your 2 windows. Oh, man.
Maybe. Exactly. Man, you nailed it. I was you just called out what was in plain sight,
Got
and
her.
you just nailed it.
That's yeah, that's creepy. Do you remember how you felt after that phone call? Because I had some of those people on my podcast before, and they gave me a reading, and I'll tell you how I felt after the reading, but I'm just curious if you felt any sort of way.
It's interesting. With the first reading, I was a little impatient. The second reading,
Yeah.
I was actually cried during it because it was just so moving. Like, and
Mhm.
afterward, I just couldn't stop thinking about it. I kept cycling through all the different things, and I wrote everything down immediately because I didn't want to lose track of any of it. But I was just kind of floored.
Nice.
But I mean, what were your reactions?
Yeah, this guy, he was an energy healer, and at the end of the call, he on my podcast, he did a reading for me, and it was a while ago, but what I remember is at the very end, he's like, "You have something going on in your teeth, and I think it's infected, and I think something's going on with your heart as well."
Hmm.
I was like, "Oh, Jesus, okay." So we hung up the call, and then the next day on my way to work, I took a train to Chicago, and I started having the biggest panic attack of my entire life. Like my tooth
Oh.
was throbbing. I felt like I was going to die.
Oh.
So I get to the final stop. I walk. I'm not trying to be too dramatic. I actually documented it on my phone. I recorded myself because of how like lethargic I was feeling, how anxious I was. It was just out of character for me. So I get to work, and it hasn't passed me yet. So I'm like, I need to go home. I can't do this today. I can't even concentrate. I feel like shit. So I went to my boss. I'm like, listen, I'm just not feeling good at all. My tooth is hurting me. I'm having like she was so cool about it. She's like, okay, yeah, just go home, take the day off, no problem. So I made a dentist appointment that day because my tooth was hurting me,
Mm-hmm.
and I got to the dentist. They're like, yeah, you have a giant infection in your tooth. We're gonna take it out right
Oh
now.
no.
Yeah. So they extracted that tooth, and then I was looking, I went home and did some Google research. I was like, can like a infected tooth affect your heart? And apparently it does. Like teeth stuff affect your cardiovascular all the time. So I mean, that was real strange
Um,
how he like pinpointed that. And the day after, I made a dentist appointment to get it extracted. And after that, I've never spoken to another one before because it freaks me out.
Yeah, I could see that. That is freaky. I mean, I'm sorry that you had that infection, but I'm so glad they got it, but I feel like God,
Totally. It's so
it's
strange.
so strange. I mean, what a strange, phenomenon. That's mind-blowing. I mean, it's just that's just crazy. And you're right. I mean, I've read some of the stuff too about the heart, like any kind of infections or whatever. I think
Uh-huh.
that's one of the reasons why they want you to treat that, because I think it can affect your heart if you don't. So it's good that you did. Um,
Yeah, it's just it's so crazy how some of these people pinpoint it to like
yeah.
it to exactly. It's like we don't have the tools to see everything around us, I feel like. I mean, we have our senses, we can see, we can smell, we can hear, we can touch, but it's like there's some other stuff around us that we just don't have the tools to see or be able to communicate with somehow. That's just how I believe,
Yeah, no, I
you
think
know.
it's true. I think it's true. And I think what I was mentioning earlier, that I feel like I think that there's a place where I think that science and this stuff can meet somewhere. I think that there's not, we just don't know enough, about these different phenomena, right? And that hopefully we will learn more about what's going on, right?
Yeah.
And be able to kind of
Yeah.
understand it better too. So, but wow, that is just a freaky story.
So I'm open-minded, needless to say, as well. I am kind of a skeptic as well, but after a few instances like that, I'm just more open-minded. Just like there's no ego behind. Like I don't know. I have no idea. I'm more than welcome to hear anybody out, and like if you can show me some things, that's cool. If you can't, if you had like your own experiences, I'm more than willing to hear you out. But the tricky thing is that there are some liars too, so we have to
Right,
who just
exactly.
want attention, you
We
know?
have to be very, I think, be critical thinkers, right? And I think
Sure.
skepticism is a good approach, but being listen to, reason and things that have been tested and studied. I think that open mindedness alongside critical thinking, right?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, it's a good way. That's a good way. Have you, uh have you seen the American Horror Stories?
It's funny. I saw the very first one, Murder House, and
Yeah,
that
what'd
one
you
I thought
think?
was just utterly terrifying. And then it just scared the life out of me. But then I felt like they
Yeah,
just stopped getting as interesting, and I stopped watching them. But what about you?
uh-huh.
Have there been, um, have you enjoyed them yourself?
I did. I liked him, but I think Murder House was my favorite. It was so creepy. I think they did a wonderful job. Yeah, I loved it. I loved it.
I thought it was great.
It
I
was
actually
real
like
creepy.
the Coven one too, of the witches, I think, and that was, I think, in New
Right, right.
Orleans.
Yeah, yeah,
But
yeah.
it's good. I mean, I think that there's a real, especially, I think, especially Murder House. It was, they did just such, I mean, that the actual, like, the visual effects and also the story, the way that those two things work together were just so creepy.
That was more psychological, wasn't it? Like
I
there were a
think
lot of weird.
so.
I haven't
Yeah.
seen it in a while, but yeah, I feel like you would have liked that one.
I think you hit the nail. Yeah, it was definitely more on a
Yeah,
psychological level. Like, it's sort of the stuff that, it was kind of the stuff that you worried about that was in the shadows, and not necessarily the stuff that was
yeah,
leaping out in the open. You always had this feeling of anxiety about what's next and what's in that dark corner, right? You know,
yeah. What's in the attic? Yeah,
right, exactly. Like that one, I thought that was a really, I mean, I think after I watched that, I think, like, it's one of those ones where you really feel haunted by it. Like, you keep thinking about it, and oh, it was so creepy.
yeah. Well, I mean, that was probably their mission that they mission accomplished.
Definitely. I thought that was a really, really, really good one. And have you watched any of the Mike Flanagan shows on Netflix, the series? Like The Haunting of Hill
Uh,
House, and then The Haunting of Bly Manor, and then what
I
is
know
it?
what they are. I have not. Do you highly recommend those?
I think they're really, really good. I think the one that you might want, so if demonic possession stuff scares the lights out of you, you might want to watch Midnight Mass, and it's Netflix, and it's one of the Mike Flanagan ones. I think it's really good. I think it's one of my favorites of his that he's done. It's Midnight Mass, and it'll creep you out. I'll put it that way.
You'll be getting an email from me at midnight.
Yeah, you'll be like, so you're like, Beth, I'm gonna haunt you from if recommending
Yeah,
that.
I'm sending you the invoices for my therapy
Right,
sessions.
exactly. But maybe you'll wake up with some comedy ideas though from it too.
Yeah, I'm sure I will. Oh, that's good. Well, Beth, we did it. It's been about an hour. I just want to say thank you so much for coming on here and sharing your story and letting me into your life a little bit, sharing your novels and kind of like how you navigate when writing books and just kind of how you see life. So thank you very much for being transparent.
Oh, thank you, and thanks for it's been you're a great interviewer, and thank you so much for hosting me. And yeah, and have a fun Halloween tomorrow with your little one.
I appreciate it. Yeah, and if you have, how can people find your books? If you have social media, go ahead and let them know how to find that.
Yeah, probably the best thing to do is go to my website, which is bethcastrodale.com, and it's Castrodale, Castrodale.com, you know, all my socials are basically under Beth Castrodale, like my Instagram and Threads, Twitter, all that stuff is Beth Castrodale. So yeah,
Awesome,
so yeah, if you read The Inhabitants, I hope you enjoy it. That my new book. So, but yeah, and
beautiful.
happy Halloween, and thanks again for hosting me.
Of course, yeah, this was wonderful. Thank you so much, and yeah, you're refreshing to talk to. So thanks for coming on. Maybe you can come on again because this was
Oh
fun.
yeah, that would be great. We'll keep in touch about that, and I would enjoy that.
Cool. Awesome. And everyone listening at home, sleep with your doors locked tonight. Okay. Sleep with your doors locked. All right. Peace out, everyone.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye bye.
Welcome to the Curiosity Chamber.